What's up guys, this is GoMan5000. Today we're back for another action figure review, and we're looking at the entirety of WWE Elite Series 84. We got Angel Garza, Jeff Hardy, Murphy, Rhea Ripley, Roman Reigns, and Sheamus. Now when it comes to the Elite sets, I usually break it down into 2, 2, and 2. Rarely do I ever review a whole wave in one video, but really the reason for this is that I'm backed up on these reviews. I've had these figures in particular for almost 2 weeks now, and I want to get these reviews out, and I got some other things to review. So this one's going to be rapid fire. We're going to be looking at all 6 figures in the wave. We got some exciting ones. It seems like every Mattel Elite set nowadays is just essential pickups, so there's always like noteworthy updates and brand new Elite characters to add to the shelf. This set is no different. So you can see the front of the boxes for everybody here. You got the window box, you got the certified authentic for 2021. On one side you're getting the renders of everybody. You flip that around and you're getting the photographs, the in-ring shots of everybody. And then when you flip it to the back, you get the picture, you get the read-up, the stats, you get every character in the wave. But that does about cover the packaging. So like I said, it's rapid fire, and we're going to start with the first time in the line, Angel Garza. Always good to add a first time in the line figure to the shelf. It's a new character, and Angel Garza, someone who's recently kind of come back, had a resurgence on Monday Night Raw. So this figure is dropping in a pretty timely manner. As for his accessories, as usual, we get the alternate hands. We start out with the pair of open hands that he can do some entrance posing, but he also does get a pair of gripping hands. And then his main accessory is the entrance pants, the removable style where he kind of rips them in half in his entrance. And these are done with the cloth goods. They velcro down the sides. You got some gold ornate details going down the front. And then what you're left with is a very good representation of Angel Garza. And we'll start out getting a look at his head sculpt here. And as always, it's a great likeness with Mattel. And the paint on this looks especially good. A lot of times with the real scan, with the true effects, you get kind of a dotty look. And it's kind of off center, a little off balance, so it looks a little off. Here it's very clean, the eyes are where they should be, and every other facial feature as a result of that. And it's a pretty good smug expression, one fitting of Angel Garza. And the hair is interesting here too. It's like its own separate piece glued on top. You see there's like the side shave painted there, and then the ponytail in the back. The hairstyle that only Angel Garza could rock. And as we move further down, we're seeing a lot of familiar territory here. It's that smaller, slimmer body that we're used to on Elite figures. When you get a line like this that's been going for 80-something waves, you're going to be getting plenty of reused parts, but it's all about how those parts are used and the new head sculpts and things like that to really make each figure stand out. And I think they did a good job here. I like the choice of color for the ring gear. That's going to stick out on the shelf. I feel like if he's not wearing this, it's usually like a green or a red or something like that. But I do like the blue color. The white wrist tape is very clean looking, very good paint on that. You know, you don't see any skin tone bleeding through there. The trunks are simple. They emulate his pants design. You got this G with a halo around it. And then the back, it's the same thing with some wings. There's a little bit of paint underneath the knee pads to get kind of the black tape. And again, the white here is just specifically very clean looking. So that's always a plus. A lot of times white plastic is going to look kind of dingy, but they did a good job here. But that about covers the look at Angel Garza. Quickly, we'll go over his articulation. It's going to be pretty similar for most of these figures. If you're used to Elite figures, 80-something waves in, you know what to expect. So the head's on the ball joint. You're getting some range of motion. Doesn't really go back at all. He goes forward that much, and maybe a little bit of tilt, but not really much. You get the ab crunch, which is going that far back. Forward that much. The waist is going to swivel. The shoulders are going to hinge, and they're going to swivel. You get the upper bicep cut there, the single jointed elbow, you get the wrist rotation and the hinge, the legs split out, you get a rotation at the thigh, and something about this figure too, it feels like this upper thigh piece and the lower thigh piece aren't like from the same mold. They seem like they're not really aligned, but that's just kind of a nitpick. The double jointed knee is pretty good, the knee pads don't really block it that much. You get the cut at the boot, you get the hinge, which is always a little bit iffy, and then the little bit of ankle rocker on the boots as well. For your size comparison, here he is with the good old basic Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. And then here he is with the Elite Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. And then here he is with Andrade. You can complete this long-lost tag team. And next up, we'll look at Jeff Hardy, who's one of the least exciting figures just because we have so many Jeff Hardy figures. But there's a reason for that, because they're always going to be a good seller overall, and they're always a good figure. There's a lot going on with Jeff Hardy, with the face paint, with the armbands, with the tattoos. As for his accessories, the alternate hands are the fist hands, and then you're getting the Team Extreme Hardy-style hands. And then you're getting the rubber t-shirt. It looks pretty good. It's going to stick out on the shelf. I think it's got some good colors to it. But those kind of hard, rubbery shirts aren't really my thing. I do prefer the cloth goods. so I don't think I'm going to be displaying him that way. And what we're left with here is a pretty basic looking Jeff Hardy, I guess, on the surface. It's worth noting too that this Jeff Hardy is the chase figure of the set. That version has some pretty wild like red and white face paint, and then I think the armbands are a little bit different, but the shirt is the same and the rest of the figure's identical. And maybe the chase variant should have went to a character like Angel Garza or Rhea Ripley, who we don't have many figures of, but it is what it is. I guess the most noteworthy thing about this Jeff Hardy compared to some of the other more recent ones is that this is a shirtless Jeff Hardy without the usual black tank top. And what that gives us is the whole spread of tattoos on the back here. You got the Hardy Boys logo. There's like a demon and a snake. I'm sure these are more specific things that I just don't know about, but really awesome tattoos there. I mean, get a look at that. Gotta love the elite style when we get nice tattooed figures like this. So the tattoos are definitely the standout here. It's almost like the figure should have been packaged backwards like that Batista figure a few years ago. When we get to the front, it's a lot of the same. This head sculpt we've seen a few times, I'm pretty sure. There's like 2 or 3 different Jeff Hardy head sculpts that they just kind of alternate with, and they all do their job. The face paint here is pretty cool. Jeff Hardy is an artist with that kind of stuff, so really cool to see that face paint really translated well here. The body's pretty plain in the front. The tattoos are represented well on the shoulder and the neck, everything like that. Even on the front of the neck here, you almost might lose it in the hair. The armbands are done as good as they can be, I guess, on these elite figures. You got some black paint with some blue paint underneath it to represent the different layers. And the pants here, I'm sure, is nothing new with the sculpt. We've had plenty of Jeff Hardy figures over the last couple years, and I'm sure this is all just reused from that. But that does about cover the Jeff Hardy. We'll go over his articulation, which is going to be similar. I'm going to keep saying that. The head looks back much better than Angel Garza. Looks forward that much. And there's a bit of rotation, again, better than Angel Garza had. Torso is going back that far, forward that much. You're going to get the waist swivel. The shoulder's going to hinge and swivel. The upper bicep cut right there at the armband. The single jointed elbow. The swivel and the hinge at the wrist. The leg split that far. You get the upper thigh cut. The double jointed knee is pretty excellent. Then you're getting the hinge, which is pretty limited by the pants sculpt, and a slight rocker on the boot. For your comparisons, here he is with the basic Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, and then with the elite Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. And then looking at it, I basically skipped all the other Jeff Hardys. This is the only elite figure I have, at least in recent times. So that's this version from probably like 20 waves ago. He came with the US title, but you can see the pants are the same sculpt, everything like that. But there is some differences here when you get from a figure from this long ago to this one now. And now at the halfway point, we're moving on to Murphy, or formerly Buddy Murphy. Now this is a pretty cool update. It's the Monday Night Messiah, the Disciple gimmick. And again, it's kind of a gimmick that has gone and went, and now the figure's finally out, and he's not doing that anymore. I feel like we haven't even barely seen Murphy on television, or maybe I'm just not paying attention, but that whole thing with Dominic and with Seth Rollins seems to kind of fizzled out. I think Dominic's busy fighting King Corbin now. Seth Rollins just came back at the Rumble, so where's Buddy Murphy? Who knows on SmackDown? But we finally got a new figure of him. Now that original figure that was a couple waves back, it was an Elite 70-something that came with the Cruiserweight belt. It was actually the Chase figure as well. That figure was pretty hard to come by. It actually became pretty expensive. And so I'm pretty glad that we're getting another Murphy so soon. I think he needed it, especially at the time, because he was with Seth Rollins. He was on TV every week in a very prominent storyline. Now, of course, the timing of these things, and he's not really doing that anymore, but it's still nice to get another figure, and one that a lot of people missed out on originally. So again, good to get this guy back on the shelf. For his accessories, you're getting the gripping hands on the figure. He also comes with a pair of pointing hands, and then he's getting a very similar rubber shirt. This one is interesting because the Jeff Hardy, it clips on the back. This one clips on the sides, which works way worse. And this is the Monday Night Messiah Seth Rollins t-shirt, but it's blank. There's nothing, there's no text on the shirt. Now, I don't know if the word Messiah is some kind of sensitive thing to put on a toy, but when you go to the back of the box, it does read that Buddy Murphy served under the Monday Night Messiah in the read-up. So I don't know how things like that work. If you can put it on the box, why can't you put it on the figure? But either way, it kind of makes this shirt a bit weird, a bit strange. It doesn't really clip well, and it doesn't have the proper deco. So that's kind of a bummer. And then we're left with the Buddy Murphy figure. It looks like a lot of the same from the previous figure. We just have the updated tights, because the previous one was the Cruiserweight champion Buddy Murphy, and he had those like ripped up kind of tights look. So really only this part of the figure is different, and then the rest of him is the exact same. But this head sculpt I'm pretty sure is the same one, but it does look good. It's got the proper colors. It's got, again, pretty clean paint. Really good overall on this wave, I want to say, with the head sculpts and where the paint hits. There's nothing really misaligned or anything like that. But it's a good, smug, mean mug face on this heel version of Buddy Murphy. Moving down to the torso, this is really the cut, the jacked version of a smaller body for Mattel figures, and that works well for Buddy Murphy. On his right side, he does get the black kind of almost it's a thin elbow pad. That's why they just paint it over the body. That leads into the white wrist tape. There's no bleeding in between the black and the white, which is nice. It's a very clean line in between the two. On this hand, the wrist tape actually wraps around all the way. On the left, it's just some white wrist tape around the wrist. So there's a bit of asymmetry there with his look. When we move on to the tights, I'm pretty sure this piece where the trunks would sit is the exact same from his previous figure, but it's all got the new paint job. It's got this side here, which leads down into the Disciple logo. And this is where it's different because, like I said, he had that unique mold on the original figure for those ripped up tights. He moved to the more traditional stuff under Seth Rollins. So these are just plain black tights and a mold I'm sure we've seen a million times. But the Disciple Murphy, that's painted really clean on there. So kind of an underwhelming figure, but I think he was worth getting out on the shelves because, like I said, that original figure, it was pretty hard to find. It was pretty expensive for a while. So if you need a Buddy Murphy for your shelf, now you have one. And if you take off that Seth Rollins shirt and you don't look at this Disciple logo too hard, this could work as a current SmackDown Buddy Murphy as opposed to a Seth Rollins Disciple version. Now to go over his articulation, the head's going back that much, looking forward that much, tilt is very good, ab crunch goes back that far, forward that much, and he's going to swivel at the waist. All the same arm articulation here, the bicep, the elbow, the swivel and hinge at the wrist. The splits go pretty much all the way, very impressive. The upper thigh cut is there. The double jointed knees don't quite hit all the way back. You get the boot cut, you get the hinge, which is the best feeling so far, and then you do get the ankle rocker at the boot. For your comparisons, here is with the basic Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, and then with the elite Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, and then here he is with his previous elite figure, and like I said, it's basically the same figure except for this piece right here being different from the more traditional thighs. And this one also has the separate knee pads while this is just in the sculpt. But the head sculpts are nearly identical, just some differences in paint, and then the rest of it again is all paint difference. The chase for this one was actually black, so then they'd be even more similar, but I have the red version here. And now we're moving on to truly exciting territory for the rest of these figures. We're starting out with the runner-up of the Women's Royal Rumble, and that is Rhea Ripley. And so Rhea Ripley, no stranger to the main roster. She fought Charlotte last year, but then she went back to NXT. She wasn't really doing too much. Now she's re-emerged at the Royal Rumble, and hopefully that means bigger and better things for Rhea Ripley, who really is one of the standouts of the NXT women's roster. For her accessories, she starts out with a pair of gripping hands. These have the black nail polish on them. They're the smaller women's hands, obviously. Then we're moving on to her entrance hands, which are the rock and roll style. She can throw them up kind of crossed as she does in her entrance. And then speaking of which, we're getting the entrance jacket with all sorts of studs and spikes going on it, as only Rhea Ripley can rock. And overall, it looks great and it matches her ring gear really well. But yeah, Rhea Ripley, her first elite figure. We did just get a basic not too long ago. I bought that basic, but now this elite figure really blows it out of the water. You got a head sculpt that's way more up to date. You can see I left the jacket on here. You see you got the chains hanging off the side of it, the Australian flag up top. Really cool stuff. I'm actually going to go ahead and take that off so we can get a closer look at the figure and its ring gear. And taking that off, that's more like it. That's a ring-ready Rhea Ripley, just like that we saw back at the Royal Rumble a couple weeks ago when she came in number 2 next to Bianca Belair, who eventually did win. And that was a really cool moment, a really cool showcase for Rhea Ripley. And we'll see where she ends up in terms of the main roster this year. But starting out on the head sculpt here, you can see it's a very up-to-date Rhea Ripley with the side shaven haircut. The one that we got in the basic was kind of almost in between this look and her previous one, where the hair was kind of off to the side. But this one we get right here is basically the Rhea Ripley you're seeing every week on NXT. This is very up-to-date. And again, very timely that she just was in number 2 at the Royal Rumble. And it seems like she's headed for the main roster sooner rather than later. So this figure will have a good timeliness on the shelf. I feel like the hair color is a bit weird. It's almost kind of grayish looking in some angles. But then again, I'm looking at it under these bright white lights. I'm sure under some more natural lighting, it doesn't look as bad. As for the actual face printing, again, it's very clean. You got the makeup, the eyebrows, all that's going on. And then even the piercings are actually painted here. You got this one going through the ear, the one on the bottom. On the other side, it's just the bottom as well. That leads down into the choker necklace, which is its own separate piece. And then we're moving down into the upper torso here with the Rhea Ripley t-shirt. It's cut up in the way that she wears it in the ring. The back is all exposed and tied up on the bottom here. And I'd say my only complaint is that she's almost maybe too narrow. I feel like Rhea Ripley's a bit wider. I don't know if that's a weird complaint, but it's just something I noticed with the figure. And even when we compare it to the basic, I think that does a better job maybe of her. I think that maybe does a better job of showing her physique off in a way. Even though I guess that's just reusing like an old buck that they use a million times, but something about this just looks kind of narrow and kind of thin, and that's just not Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley's the big bruiser of the NXT women's division. And sure, she's a lot taller than most of those figures, but maybe the physique is kind of lost on this figure just a little bit. That being said, the shirt here with the cutout Rhea and then Ripley across, this is done very well. And there's even unique sculpt here. This is brand new for her. You got the kind of straps from the top of the shirt here, and then the lower torso is also its own unique sculpt. The shirt actually has a seam line here, and then the tie down in the back. And when you get to the back, you know, there's definitely some definition there, but I don't know, something about it just looks very thin to me, and specifically narrow. But other than that, a bang up job by Mattel. You got plenty of details once you go down to the rest of the figure. The gauntlets are removable pieces. This is something also they could have just kind of painted black around her wrists, but we do have these gauntlets. And then everything down here is brand new as well. So basically everything except for maybe the arms is brand new original sculpt, which you always got to appreciate from Mattel. With the previous 3 male figures, I'm talking about all this reuse, but the female figures seem to be getting almost better than the male figures as time goes on in this line. So here's a piece they definitely could have kept flat and just painted a belt, painted a zipper, but all this is raised, all this is sculpted. You got the pockets in the back here. The back is otherwise kept pretty plain other than the straps on the boots, but when you get to the front, there's just so much details here. You got chains hanging, you got rivets going around every angle, and you even got the little fishnet hints on the thigh here, and then on the lower thigh here as well, just before the knee. And with this being all new sculpt, we'll see how that all goes with the articulation. The head does not really look back, it does not really look forward, and it doesn't really tilt. So you're really just getting rotation out of the head here. The torso is on the ball joint for the women's figures. I always prefer a ball joint to an ab crunch. I feel like this range of motion is just way better than what you're going to get on those ab crunched figures. Doesn't really go forward, but everything else is very good. The waist does swivel, and it actually cuts off of the belt. I didn't even notice that. It's a very creative way of hiding a seam line. I didn't even notice that when I was looking at the aesthetic, so that's really good. The shoulders are going to hinge and swivel. They feel a bit weak, actually. You do get the upper bicep cut, the single jointed elbow, and then the hinge and the rotation at the wrist. The legs are going to split about that far. They seem a bit uneven, the legs, if that's one complaint. I mean, they're definitely different sculpts, and there seems like some kind of seam right there. But the legs overall seem a little bit uneven. That might be how the figure was posed in the box or something. But even when you go to do the splits, this leg goes out a lot farther. You get the upper thigh cut, the double jointed knee, you're getting the boot cut, and then the hinge and the ankle rocker. For your comparison, here she is with the basic Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. And then here she is with the elite Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. And then finally with her recent basic figure, who, like I said, I think just captures her more intimidating physique a bit better. But obviously the elite's got so much better details. The pants are really night and day, and even the torso. This is a reused torso, but something about it, she's just a bit wider on top, and I think that just works better for Rhea Ripley. But other than that, you know, the elite's definitely the way to go. And then finally, we are almost there. We're 5 out of the 6 figures in, and we're looking at the tribal chief, the head of the table, Roman Reigns. And we get a Roman Reigns figure like 6 times a year, but there's only so often where it's an exciting release, and this is definitely one of them because this is from his recent most comeback and basically his current run where he's the head of the table. He's got the wreck everyone and leave shirt. This is the heel, badass persona of Roman Reigns that pretty much everyone on the internet has come to love, and now Roman Reigns is like this beloved character all of a sudden after years of hatred towards him. He's got 3 sets of hands, those being fist hands, he's got grip hands, and then he's got the Samoan, the brother throw it up hands that only Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe figures can come with until the end of time. Now on the figure we start out with the vest, the tactical vest that he's now abandoned, but this one's done in black and white. But you could switch that out for the wreck everyone and leave, the cloth goods t-shirt that he did wear in his big comeback when he attacked Bray Wyatt and he held up that Universal title. And that's kind of been his t-shirt going forward. You're also getting 2 different head sculpts. You're getting the longer hair, the more traditional head sculpt. I'm pretty sure we've seen this one countless times. And then the brand new is the man bun, the sadistic head of the table Roman Reigns head sculpt. Now this likeness does not look as good to me as any of the other Roman Reigns. I feel like the more I look at it, the more I'm getting used to it. I think what happened here is that they took this head and they actually just like sculpted it more traditionally instead of getting like a 3D scan, because there's just something about this likeness that looks very soft and not very accurate to me, especially when you have a very good likeness in the box already with the longer haired head sculpt. That being said, I'm going to have to display him with this man bun, with this newer head sculpt, because it is what is closer to what he's doing on TV. I just think that the likeness isn't quite there. Hopefully that's fixed by the time we get to the next Roman Reigns figure, and hopefully something that is fixed as well is that we're missing the whole half of his back here, the updated tribal chief tattoos. I don't remember the timeline on when he actually got those tattoos, but it's been long enough, I feel like. I think what the Mattel people said is that they were able to add the cloth goods because that's always something that comes in later, and then even the head sculpt was added in, but the tattoos were just so far along the process, I guess, when this lineup was made. So basically this figure started out as a pretty outdated Roman Reigns, and then now it's a slightly less outdated Roman Reigns figure because of what they were able to add. But when you look at him from the front, you add this head sculpt, you take off the vest and the t-shirt, this is the Roman Reigns that's on TV every week. Just don't mind the tattoos in the back. Just have them like this in your display, and you got a very exciting Roman Reigns release. That being said, there isn't as much to go over because this is like, how many times are we going to get a Roman Reigns figure, and what can you even do differently? So pretty much neck down, this is identical to the past 2 or 3 years of Roman Reigns figures that we've got, and probably even more before that. So he's got the big buff body, he's got the tattoos that again are a bit outdated, but they look good, the ones that are here. He's got the 2 wrist gauntlets, the wrist tape is painted on this side, and the pants sculpt here I'm pretty sure are the same as always, but these are just straight up black cast. There's no paint to be seen on here, and I guess that's fine because they are plain black. He doesn't really wear the, you know, colorful designs that he once did in like 2016. This has pretty much been the normal for a pretty long time now, so I really got no issue with it, but it is just a lot of the same. You're basically paying for the head sculpt here and the cloth goods t-shirt. And again, I don't know the timelines on these things, how they work in the factories. I think what really could have brought this to the next level is if they went ahead and included that Blue Universal Championship that we know they already can make because it did come with the Goldberg that technically came out before this figure did. And I think whenever there's an opportunity to add a title belt, I think you should always add it, even if it's not necessary. Even the Buddy Murphy we just looked at, give him that Raw Tag Team belt. Even though we've got 40 of them, I always think he should have a belt rather than not. But if you're someone that has that Goldberg figure and you know sure as hell you want to take that belt off of Goldberg, here you go with your Roman Reigns. You got him as up to date as possible, the Universal Champion Roman Reigns, which is very cool, but there just isn't much new otherwise. We'll do articulation with the new head sculpt. He looks back that far, forward that much, and he does get a pretty good amount of tilt. Ab crunch goes that far back, that far forward, and it does rotate. You got the shoulder hinge, the swivel, upper bicep cut, single jointed elbow, the wrist hinge and rotation, the waist cut, you got the splits, upper thigh cut, double jointed knee, you get the boot cut, the hinges, and the ankle rockers on the boots. For comparisons, we'll do this one a little bit differently. We'll start with the 2 Seth Rollins figures that are in the studio, and then I think it's appropriate to have all of the Roman Reigns figures together, and you can see that this sculpt is exactly the same for the pants, and basically everything that's underneath of the vest. And then for some variety, we'll bring in the Royal Rumble winner Edge, and then Kevin Owens, who looks very small next to these two, maybe a bit too small. And then finally, the 6th and final figure of the set is Sheamus, of all people, who hasn't gotten a figure, I feel like, in like 3 or 4 years. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I seriously feel like there's not many Sheamus figures out there that represent any really recent versions. As far as elites go, I'm pretty sure the last version we got was like when he was WWE champion and he had the mohawk and everything like that. This version of Sheamus where he came back with his original kind of haircut and the beard, I feel like he's been around for over a year now on TV with this kind of look, with this kind of attitude. If not, then it's getting close to a year. And Sheamus is on TV every week, especially now with Drew McIntyre. That's going to be the feud going forward. And he's been feuding with Keith Lee for the past couple of months. So pretty good to finally get a new Sheamus out on the shelf. And for me, I don't really have any Sheamus figures. I have a basic of his look from the bar with the 2-pack with Cesaro. And then I think I also have a really old Elite that's banged up that I got in like a $2 bin. But other than that, this is really the definitive Sheamus for my collection so far. And it really took a long time to get here, I feel like. There hasn't been a good Sheamus figure on the shelves in quite a long time. I mean, what we get here is a lot more of the same. Even though it's been a long time, there isn't much to update with Sheamus, especially now that he's gone back to his original look, or at least something that's reminiscent of that. But we'll look at the head sculpt, and this might be the first time that we're getting a true effects Sheamus. And this one's almost scary realistic. If you really look at the eyes, you got the wrinkles and the expression's really good here. But that being said, I do wish we got some alternate heads with Sheamus here to get some different expressions. This one's kind of like, I don't even know what to call this expression. It's very stoic. Looks like he's thinking about life or something like that. I think with Sheamus, you should get like a smiling head and then like a screaming bro kick head. And I think those are more representative of Sheamus's character. I think another cool opportunity for a Sheamus figure is going to be to make that kind of look that he's been doing recently, where he wears like the suspenders and the brown pants and the hat and everything like that, like the pub fighting guy. I think that's going to be a cool figure once we eventually get that. Hopefully not as a basic, because he'll definitely butcher it. And now it feels like I'm rambling. I didn't even go over his accessories yet. He's got the 2 fists, he's got the grip hands, and then he's got the snake bite shirt, just with the very simple white print over it. So one of the more simple shirts, but I think it does add something. And then also, if you want to consider his necklace an accessory, it does come on the figure already in the packaging. But as always, that is removable. You can kind of just slide it off his head if you like to. The rest of the body is basically the same that Sheamus figures have been since like 2010 or whenever he's had his first figure. I think these are all the usual pieces and parts that would make up a Sheamus figure for however long he's been around. I will say the head and the torso kind of look a bit discolored when you compare it to the arms and the legs. I mean, it's very hard to notice. I think it's, again, because of my lighting. If you turn that off, it's already starting to look more uniform. And if he's under traditional lighting, it's not going to be a problem. But it's that pale skin tone that we really only get with like Sheamus and Paige figures, both of which we haven't really gotten in a long time. So not much else to go over other than that. There's silver details for his wrist tape with the Sheamus kind of cross logo, the snake bite with the LACH. I never knew what that meant, actually, but that's always on his ring gear. He's got his logo on the back, the snake bite logo on the knee pads, and then those silver details carry over to the boot. But that does about cover the aesthetic of Sheamus. For his articulation, the head's going back not very far. Forward's pretty decent, and he does get some very good tilt. Ab crunch goes far back. Forward that much. You're getting the rotation at the waist, the hinges and the swivel at the shoulder, the upper bicep cut, single jointed elbow, the wrist does all that movement. The splits go that far, the upper thigh cuts there, double jointed knees are pretty good. You got the boot cut, and you got the hinge and the slide ankle rocker at the boot. And then for our final comparison of the day, we'll bring back our trusty basics. And then we'll bring in our elite figures of Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. And I couldn't find any of my Sheamus figures, but here he is with some of his adversaries, which are Keith Lee and Drew McIntyre. And overall, that's going to do it for Elite Series 84. Haven't really done a 6-figure video before. I think I've come close with some DC stuff, but 6 figures in one video, quite an accomplishment that we got to. If you made it this far, I appreciate you for sticking with the video this long. And overall, another solid Elite set. I think really the thing that's missing here is some good old title belts. I had to go ahead and throw that Universal title on the Roman Reigns, and it's not going to really ever leave that figure, at least until he loses the belt in real life. But yeah, maybe a tag team championship for Murphy, Intercontinental Championship for Jeff Hardy, of course that Universal title for Roman Reigns. Something definitely could have been done. Pretty sure Angel Garza held the 24/7 title, so could have thrown that on him. I think a belt definitely would have taken this wave to the next level, but what we're left with, I think we got really some solid updates for Jeff Hardy, for Sheamus, for Murphy, for Roman Reigns. I think all 4 of them you really need for the most up-to-date shelf you can make. And then for Rhea Ripley and Angel Garza, always nice to get some brand new characters in the Elite line. Rhea had that basic, but obviously you're going to want an Elite figure on your shelf. So overall, some good stuff here. I'm going to be posting some figure photography at the end of this video. You can see more of that on Instagram, scoopman_5000. But that wraps up Elite Series 84. If you want to check out the rest of my WWE figure reviews, as well as AEW, DC, Marvel, NECA, Super 7, everything like that, it's all in the archives of the channel. But that does do it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next action figure review.